The number of coronavirus cases in India has officially topped 20 million as the crisis tightens its grip. Many experts believe that the real figures for deaths and infections are much higher than the official tally. At the same time, supply shortages are hampering the national vaccination drive, and the healthcare system is buckling under the weight of new cases.
There is no room for these patients at this hospital. Instead, they are made to wait outside and left hoping that the oxygen supply will hold out. As ambulances queue at hospitals, other means of transport are also taking on a crucial role. Trains are India's lifeblood, its tracks hauling freight and people across the country's vast landmass. Today, they also offer a lifeline. This locomotive pulls a precious cargo, oxygen, headed to the worst-hit areas. India's railroads have been drafted into the country's emergency response in other ways too.
11 train coaches have been converted into isolation wards. There's a separate coach for the doctors. That's 12 isolation coaches available here. There are 2 oxygen cylinders in each coach, and we've set up 9 air coolers as well. Sprinklers on the ceiling control the temperature. 16 patients can be accommodated in each coach, and sanitation waste disposal arrangements have also been made.
Ingenuity and improvisation are doing their bit to stem the rising tide of coronavirus deaths. But it's not enough to shield the Modi government from anger over its failure to prevent this deadly second wave of the pandemic. It was a contributing factor to an unexpected loss for the Prime Minister's BJP party, losing an important state election in West Bengal. Much like the surge in infections, this is not what Modi had in mind when he declared the end of the pandemic at political rallies all over India. After this miscalculation, his political fortunes may be linked to the coronavirus more closely than ever.
And for more, let's bring in DW's Delhi Bureau Chief, Amrita Chima. Amrita, 20 million infections reported in India. How are authorities trying to reverse the surge?
Hi, Sarah. Yes, 20 million new infections in the country, a painful milestone for India. Now, the government is trying all it can to curb this surge, the second wave that India is now seeing. It's doing this through restrictions, lockdowns, curfews in many parts of the country, including here in Delhi. In fact, in one bit of hopeful news, the number of new infections in the past 24 hours fell in Delhi to the lowest in about 20 days. So, of course, authorities are hoping that this is to do with the lockdown that we have here in Delhi. The second plank, Sarah, that the Indian government has in trying to curb the surge is vaccination. They started this in January, and now they've expanded the vaccination program to include anyone who's over the age of 18. So the vaccination program has got underway in Delhi. Yesterday, some 40,000 people between the ages of 18 and 44 came out. And this is important, Sarah, because a lot of young people are getting infected during the second surge.
And, you know, even still, though, Amrita, we're hearing about severe shortages of vaccines, in fact, and people wondering how is that India, one of the world's biggest suppliers of vaccines, is in this situation?
In fact, yes, you're right. Many of the states in India are complaining about shortage of vaccines, and that they don't have enough to get this new phase of the vaccination program underway, that people over 18 can get vaccinated. Now, India has the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines. That's in Pune, the Serum Institute of India. Now, that played a critical role, along with another indigenous vaccination company, during this vaccination program. But it seems that India somehow underestimated its own need after the end of the first surge. It began sending vaccinations overseas as part of its vaccination diplomacy. Some 66 million doses were sent to dozens of countries. And now it finds itself in a position where it doesn't have enough vaccine for its own people. So they've stopped that program. But they've also started trying to get vaccines from overseas. For example, Russia's Sputnik V. That's now also being used in India's vaccination drive.
Delhi Bureau Chief Amrita Chima, thank you so much for joining us. Well, now to some other developments in the pandemic. Sri Lanka has imposed tough new restrictions in an effort to contain the spread of the virus. Public gatherings and weddings are banned, and schools will remain closed until further notice. Cambodia is set to lift its lockdown in the capital, Phnom Penh, despite another record rise in daily cases. The country is battling its worst outbreak to date. And North Korea has warned its citizens to brace for a prolonged struggle against the virus. The UN has earmarked nearly 2 million vaccine doses for Pyongyang, but it's unclear how and when those shipments will arrive.